You heard it right here, right down from the beach.
The new ivory is mammoth.
What do you guys want to know? I've done way too much research on dinosaurs.
Almost a larger-than-life figure.
There's no reason at all to think it was made by aliens.
Drop down and go swimming as fast as you can. Out of whale.
All these big giants give me a kiss and tell me they don't.
The crowd, just the pot, the loudness, the excitement, the electricity. I don't know if I can take your little Canadian destroyer.
Future is scary, but it's also wonderful.
Welcome back to Unscriptify, the show where conversations are raw, stories are real, and occasionally my jokes are questionable at best. This time, I wonder why anyone would leave a perfectly warm home to walk across frozen wastelands. And today's guest has done just that many times. While most of us consider it an achievement when we finally get our first steps on the Fitbit, today's guest, he measures his walks in Arctic miles, in Antarctic blizzards, and the occasional overlook. That's the top of Mount Everest. He's an explorer, a storyteller, and let's be honest, probably the only guy you would trust with a compass. Please let me welcome incredible Mark Wood. Mark, how you doing?
That was great. You're going to have to, if I go on tour, you're going to have to be the presenter. You fine. That was kind of you. I'm very well. It's good to meet you guys.
Yeah, you too. Well, for the beginning, most of us avoid the cold, yet you seem to run straight into it. You were into army, then firefighter, and you found yourself as an explorer in the end. Where did this obsession with extreme environment begin? Can you recall even the first expeditions that you went on, the feelings and everything?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you covered the military and fire and rescue there. I think I've always had extreme sort of jobs to do. At first, I always, a lot of people who do adventures, they're looking for something which is completely out of the norm of their normal life, if you like. So I was looking to do that. I was working as part of the fire and rescue service, and I was looking for an extreme adventure. I linked up with this guy who's putting a team together, and rolling on, I ended up in the Arctic for the first time, and I was in complete fear of what was in front of me. And I was thinking, what the hell have I got into? So I stepped off the plane in high Arctic Canada, coughing because it was so cold. It was minus 45. I was just thought, how am I going to sort of survive the next 70 days training? And I think, to answer your question, during those 70 days, I learned how to move, survive, but most of all, appreciate the extreme Arctic. Once you know how to cope, then you can take time to observe. And I think that was the moment that kind of changed my life, really.
So, was it that you knew when you enrolled on that first training, on the first expedition, that this will be something for you as an adventurer, or was it afterwards, actually?
Yeah, I think it was afterwards, because when I was out there training, it was so intense that I did appreciate it. But I think you get a better perspective of extreme things in life, or anything in life, when you come back to your own home. So you've probably been on a nice holiday, or you've done something with your friends. And when you come home a few days later, a few weeks, and you have time to reflect, you go, oh my God, that was pretty good. And you can actually pick the areas that you really enjoy because you've got more clarity. So I think coming home is all part of the process of going back away again. When I came back, I looked at my job in the fire and rescue service, which was a good job. But I thought, I kind of like this. I liked everything, from leaving Heathrow to going to Ottawa, to heading up to high Arctic, to, seeing Inuit people, seeing this beautiful settlement that we were operating from, to then learning new skills. Skills not just as in putting up a tent, but skills as in communication and working together in very, extreme, tight conditions of a storm or tremendous cold or whatever it might be. And then seeing myself develop from that. So seeing my body change from being quite bulky and fat, if you like, to actually trimming down and feeling great about myself. And also something which I always talk about actually in talks is the Arctic has a strange way of telling you who you really are. So it's like holding a mirror up. I think all of us, me included, walk around each day with a bit of a shield in front of us. We don't expose who we are completely. But the Arctic, because it sort of it strips away all the ego that you have, and then you see you as a fresh person. And a lot of people don't like that, especially egotistical people. Maybe, who feel like they're macho or whatever, to go out, find that they need help and they can't do certain things is pretty tough. But I kind of embraced that over the first 4 or 5 years that I was operating in the Arctic. I embraced the fact that, okay, I'm not what I thought I was. And if you can run with that, then you become a better person, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But is it maybe ego, maybe for you or for people that you talk about from other teams, from other crews? Is the ego something that got you going on the first place and on the first expeditions at the beginning? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, ego is a good thing. It depends what part of the spectrum you're on.
Yeah.
But to have ego means that you will go out and attempt certain things or step outside of what people are trying to tell you to do. I can see a different avenue on this. That's the egotistical side, which is a good thing. And then you go to the extreme of people just wanting to be a superstar within 5 minutes on YouTube or whatever. But for 5 or 6 years, it was, I think, based around ego because um, I wanted to replicate what I'd read about Sir Ernest Shackleton. These are British explorers, Robert Falcon Scott, Amundsen, Norwegian, and also a guy called Sir Ranulph Fiennes, who's a British guy, more in my sort of era. These guys were pushing the boundaries and inspiring people. And I wanted to replicate that and get the photograph on the wall, etc. I've now got the photograph on the wall.
Yeah.
Mm. But yeah, I wanted to do that. But then after like 6 years, I don't want to jump too far forward with this conversation, but after 6 years, I then thought, well, I want to do this as a living. So I left the fire and rescue service and I completely immersed myself in exploration, whatever that meant. I didn't know what it meant at the time. And I started to change the way I explore by incorporating education and environmental programs. I then moved into making films and sort of looked at it more as a brand, as a product, and thought, how can I expand exploration for a new era of people and make it exciting as an unknown? That was my aim, really.
Yeah, what you're referencing is broadcasting your, for example, hikes to Mount Everest ascent and everything to children in schools, to millions afterwards. 1.2 or 20 or 12 million, right? At the end.
Yeah,
On one of the broadcasts, yeah.
Well, that was in 2019. So yeah, I mean, you touched on the real point. You've done your research. You two guys. So yeah, in 2011 and 12 was a real turning point for me because I linked up with Skype, and I know we're on Zoom at the moment. Sorry, Zoom, but Skype was only 3 years old at the time, and it was developed.
Now it's dead.
And now it's dead, of course. Well, the reason why I personally think it is because they didn't see this, what we're doing now. I think this was brought out maybe by COVID. We'll start to use it for. Yeah. But you think back in 2011, 12, if you were born there, I don't know. If you go back that far, I'm sure you were.
We remember Skype, yeah.
If you go back to 2011 and 12, there wasn't the technology we have as such today for global visual communication. And I went into the offices in London, which was thriving with Skype people. And I said, look, I've got this idea of doing an expedition on Mount Everest, but take it that Everest is going to be the classroom. every level as we head up to the summit of the mountain, I will be linking with children around the world. And we linked with 10,000 children as we knew it. There was a real knock-on effect of that within countries.
Mhm.
Break it down, there was 10 countries that we linked with, all the way from all ends of the world, and all different types of children, from rich schools to self-funded schools to um, uh, family sort of educated school children. So we linked to all these children around the world, and it was extremely successful. Um, and I got a lot of publicity from it. And then that's how I then started working. I saw a way of creating great global education programs, but in an easy way.
Mhm.
Because I thought, I've got this great idea, it's free. But when you've got a great idea and it's free, it still doesn't mean it's going to work.
Yeah.
I needed to develop something which would project what I wanted to do. So I went to Skype and I said, can I use your technology? Can I use your guys to exploit what I'm going to do? They made a lot of publicity from it. They got a lot out of it. They paid for the expedition, of course, but they logoed themselves up on me, and it was we're still talking about it today, even though they've sort of disappeared. But so that's how I then moved on. I went to Warwick University in the UK. I went to Lonely Planet Kids and other platforms of education where their education was already set up. And I just piggybacked on that with extreme expeditions. So to end this, 1.2 million children was actually on the 2019 expedition on Everest. But that was projected because I was a patron for the Buzz Aldrin Foundation, the astronaut Buzz Aldrin. So he had a foundation that wanted to encourage people to look beyond the moon and look towards Mars. And I was there to promote that on Mount Everest. How cool is that? So, but that was neat. I mean, yeah, I don't just say these things. I'm so proud of it, basically. Yeah. But you can see that I come with the title of explorer, adventurer, professional camper, whatever you want to call me. Um, I saw exploration was exciting for me. I saw polar exploration was the way I wanted to go, and mountain exploration. But then I saw how I could utilize it for education, global education. And that's been the last 20 odd years for me. So,
Yeah, yeah. Listening to it, especially reminds me because you mentioned Skype and how at the time technology climbing on the Mount Everest is a big deal. Although now at this point, a lot of people have succeeded. I remember when we have we had a 3-man crew from our country that actually succeeded. They
On the second attempt.
went on the top of it. And I remember later when I thought about it, I felt a little bit bad for them because they didn't get the publicity even here that they should have for that kind of amazing achievement. That the fact that they went to the top of the world at the time, it was 2010, I think, or 11 as well, close to your time. And I was like thinking later on it, I was like, they did, they probably didn't get the play at home that they should have.
yeah, I mean, it is a shame in one way because I think what if you can do really positive, great expeditions and you're a good person and you promote the planet and exploration in a good way, then isn't children and adults to look at, because people love to embrace the planet and the worth of the planet, etc. So to sort and it's not only that, it's the courage of those three individuals to go and do this expedition. But in another sense, because they didn't get the limelight, it doesn't really matter because they will always have that within them and their families will be proud of them. So you don't, you guys have asked me to come on this podcast because you saw me on another platform, but I'm not a famous person. And I'm quite pleased about that. And exploration doesn't really build famous people. They build presenters who delve into exploration and do it very well. But there's only a few people like that. There's only a few real key explorers, mountaineers that are really well known, and they're the ones you see on the big show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
You will be quite a big deal today.
between the three of us, I'm well known.
Yeah. Sure. Yes. But we are still sticking to the Mount Everest topics and Skype and everything. On that first expedition that was broadcasted, you were 250 meters far from the top of the Mount Everest. How did it felt to be there, seeing the top? Maybe not seeing it because of the blizzards and everything, but how did it felt to come back and being so near to the goal?
And
You know.
at any point did you think, what the fuck did we need this?
I think when you're so yeah, so I mean the little bit of backstory on that. I was 72 days on the mountain. We were doing this great thing for Skype. We were also trying to climb Mount Everest as well, which is tough in its own way. There's 4 of us in the team, 2 Nepalese and 2 Brits. One of them was a doctor, and the other one me. So we were doing a 4-person team, which is great. I love working in small teams. And we were moving slow, which was brilliant for me because that's how I am. I'm a tortoise. So we got up to Camp 4, which is just below 8,000 meters. And then we were doing the final ascent. And we got to, as you quite rightly said, about just under 250 meters away from the summit. And I could see the summit. It was quite a clear night, but it was minus 45. There was a 50-mile-an-hour side wind, but you could still see the head torches of the climbers reaching the summit. So there was an incentive there. I dismiss cold and wind because I was safe attached to the line with my carabiner. I was quite warm actually in my suit because I'm quite a warm person, helps me with the polar exploration. And I was very, very focused in the moment. And I think this is really important. I didn't think about the what ifs. I was safe at the moment. I was walking 1 foot in front of the other. My heart was beating well. My brain was functioning well. And I thought, well, if I just keep going like this, within the next 2 or 3 hours, I'll be at the summit and then we can do the descent. And we were the only team there at the time. It was in pitch black. So pretty horrendous conditions, but really just living in that moment, if you like. But my colleague in front of us, who was Nepalese, he cut his hand on a carabiner. It just jolted his brain. He'd been to the summit before, but he could see the blood coming down. And I think when you lose slight focus in that moment, then it can have other effects within your mental strength and stuff like that. Whatever it was, he slumped to the ground, and I went up to him, and he was, he was dying in front of us. If we'd left him. And then I went back to my colleague, the doctor, and he said his feet was frozen. He needed his head down. And then I looked around for the 4th person. He was already abseiling into the darkness, leaving the scene behind, which I spoke to him probably a week later in Kathmandu about. So I could, and I was going to do the first call at the summit of Mount Everest via Skype to these 10,000 children and bosses of Skype and Microsoft. So there's no pressure. But to talk about it now is quite easy because you talk about it like this, you da 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 da. In the moment, you're basically operating without emotion, which I learned from the military and from rescue, that you can be more effective in the moment if you dismiss emotion and just deal with the situation. And then you need to make a decision. Do you ascend? Do you descend? Do you deal with it at the moment? And usually when I'm talking to schools about this at all ages, I say, what decision did I make? And they say, well, you left the guy, you went up to the summit, you came back down, and all these, there's about 5 or 6 answers. And the thing is, they're all right, because they're all decisions that have been made on Everest. People have left people have carried people down. So that none of them, all of them have happened. But the decision I made was the mountain, a human life is bigger than the mountain. So in that moment, and probably from my fire and rescue days of understanding the importance of life and seeing people die in car accidents and other stuff as well, that you will get a grip at the moment that you need to sort of, this guy's got family, you know? So I aborted the expedition. We started walking back. My colleague's feet started to warm up because he started to move his feet. So he was generating blood around his feet and all this. We got back to Camp 4. The wind was horrendous. We stayed alive that night. We walked back Camp 321 over 3 days. We all came back alive. And the thing was, the only thing that was on my mind at that point, because we all survived, I dismissed the summit at that point. But the only thing was, what were the children going to think about my actions? Because their expectations were literally high of what I was about to do. But they learned more about me turning back on that mountain than they would have done about me waving a flag at the top of the mountain, because it becomes more of a human story that they connect with. And another important thing I did at the time, and I always stress this with people who are either going through mental health problems, changing their life, decisions, whether they want to move the job, they've got stress with a family, whatever it might be, whatever decision you make at that moment, that I made a decision on Everest, when you get time, write it down. Why did you make that decision? Because a decision like that is made with everything else in the moment. There's lots of factors going on that make you make that decision. It's usually based around professionalism and training and understanding and stuff like that, and also your own DNA of who you are as a human being. So I wrote that down probably as soon as I got back down to base camp. I actually use a dictaphone. So I talked into it, I processed it, and then I didn't play it again. And what happens is 6 weeks later, 6 months, 2 years later, when you're saying, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? You can refer back to your original notes and it justifies everything for you. So I think it's important to keep that written down for future reference. So
That's a good system. That's a good system.
it is phenomenal. I mean, a lot of talks that I give, I try and tell people at the start that, look, you work in offices, you work wherever you work. How can you relate to what I do? Well, you can completely relate to what I do, because everything I do is based around me as a human being. So you can draw parallels to your own lives and your own work. So the lessons that you can gain from my actions at a very, mirror your life completely in a very simplistic, it's, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious about people like you, people who are challengers to nature, to themselves. How do you feel about what regular people like the us or somebody would think of as adventure after going through all of this? Is it still doing you the same way like us, or is it just boring?
What normal adventure you mean? You mean just walking and
Yes, everyday life stuff that people,
okay,
Consider it.
this is how you get to know me better, by asking questions like that, you see.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the planet. I've seen the extremes of the planet, the curvature of the Earth from Everest, the 360 of nothing, complete white horizon, crossing Antarctica, and I've floated on sea ice across the Arctic itself. I've met incredible people, from Inuit to Nepalese to people around the world. I've seen color, I've seen anger, I've seen joy in my short lifetime. Okay, everything is an adventure. Step outside that front door and experience as much as you can. You don't have to climb Everest. You don't have to walk to the North Pole. Okay, these are really hard things to put together, to pay for, and then to do. I admire anybody who steps out and walks responsibly into this wonderful planet of ours. promote the planet for its worth. So,
Yeah. If you want to do it, do it.
you don't mind me anything like that? Do you? You don't mind me doing it?
I drank a liter since we started.
I don't have ice. I don't like ice, so that's fine. That's,
Warm water, I believe.
Due to climate change, we can't have ice and water.
Yes. Yeah, and most of the people talk about ascent, talks about about journey towards somewhere. Like we forget that Odysseus, for example, he got lost on his way back home. Nobody talks about descent from the summit. Nobody talks coming back from Antarctica, from the glaciers and everything. So, is it? There's probably also problems, challenges, and everything on the way back home. And do you perceive it the same way, as the same challenge with the same goals, or how do you handle it?
yeah, I mean that's a really great question. Really is a good question. It's because usually you're right. A film of an ascent of Everest will finish once they reach the top and wave the flag, and stories ended. But you want to know what happens afterwards, the human side of it, and you know, but physically still back on expedition. Once you reach a summit or you reach a pole or wherever you go to, the way back home is even more dangerous. And the reason being is that your defenses are down. They say that military, when you go on patrol, you will usually get ambushed on the way back because you're thinking of that nice dinner that you're going to eat, and the rest you're going to get for the next few days. So you get complacent. So whenever I'm guiding in October in the Himalayas, and when we come back from wherever we're going, I always get the team together and say, look, we've now got to switch back on because we've got another 3 days to get down. This is where problems will happen. So that's why it's a question. So yeah, in terms of exploration and still on the journey, the descent or the back home bit is so important. But then coming back home, I've already mentioned writing down your thoughts if things don't go quite right. That will help the balance of your mental health, because extreme exploration isn't straightforward. That's why it's extreme. You don't always succeed in what you're doing. So, and you come back and, I work alone a lot. I'm known for sort of solo work. And an empty house is a real hard area to process stuff. So yeah, coming home is sometimes very, very difficult. But then a lot of the expeditions I do allow me to think with clarity and it gives me creativity. So I do a lot of planning for the next You ask anybody who does this extreme wise, they're planning the next expedition because they've got time to think. So, yeah. I would hope if you love this job, you do.
Yeah, we spoke obviously extensively about the expeditions, preparations, and mentality into it. But one of the big things that is your goal with is, from what I've gathered, is to raise awareness also about the climate change, right? In regards to that, did you think that you were successful in it? Obviously you gathered a huge audience in it, and but did you think that from when you started, the issue of the climate change kind of etched into people's brains more than versus now?
Yeah. I think we have been, the teams that I've worked with have been successful in the way that we've reached, 1.2 million children in the end. And if, one of those children go on to make great changes, and that's fantastic, isn't it? We can only do what we do. I'm not an activist. That's the point. I'm a realist in the sense that I promote what I've seen and how I feel. And I think humans have this horrible neglect anyway, and always have for what's around us, whether it's human beings or animals or, the planet itself. But there are a huge percentage that understand the worth and the beauty of where we live and how lucky we are to exist at this time of science and understanding. So when I started off, as I said at the start of the podcast, it was based on ego, but there was nothing to do with the environment. But over the last 22 years, it's been a field trip, if you like, a school field trip, where I've gone in sort of wanting to be physical with expeditions to then really understanding, as I said, of quite a lot, the worth. And then how can I promote the worth and what happened with that? Did we get anything out of it? That's all out there. There's loads of adults that have seen me around the world. I only occasionally bump into some people or organizations that tell me lovely stories that have happened. But you don't see what's happened, but you hope that people have been inspired, if you like. I reconnected with Skype in just before 2019 because I thought maybe they'd like to come on board again, but they moved off to the US. I think Microsoft had bought them, and the whole, as you quite rightly said, the whole thing changed. There was nobody left within the UK. Only one person actually that I connected with, which was very, very strange. But when I was speaking to the guys in the US, the bosses of Skype in 2019, one of the ladies said, "Oh, Mark, do you remember me from 2013?" I was like, "No, I'm sorry." She said, "Well, we got one of the schools involved, and they got one of the children to come up to the screen like this. And usually with kids, I go, "Oh, give us a fist bump," and they go like this, or shake hands, or you give a high five or whatever, and you go like this, and so you use the screen very, very animated. And I was in the death zone on Mount Everest, where the oxygen levels are at 30%. So it's very difficult to breathe and operate and function anyway without having to do this, And at that point, I was sort of tied with a rope with an anchor in the ground so I wouldn't slip off the mountain. I had an iPad in front of me, and we were connected via Inmarsat to separate satellites to create a Wi-Fi space. I mean, it's all changed now, but and I pulled my mask aside, my oxygen mask, and I was talking to a school in Australia, and one of the children who came up to so there's 200 children sat in Australia in a sports hall watching me live in the death zone on Mount Everest. How great is that? And one of the children came up to ask a question to this explorer in the death zone live. I don't know what the question was, but what the child, I found out 6 years later, was underperforming, was basically going to move schools because they weren't a decent human being at the time. And they asked me a question and I answered it. And because of that experience, they changed the way they were at school. They still didn't do great, but they remained at the school and developed, So that moment changed them. That I have about 10 references to different areas of where I've heard that things have happened, which is great. And sometimes I meet people who've enjoyed it. For me, that's wonderful. It's a real gift to me because we can only do what we can do. To hear things like that is just really, really inspiring. It makes it all worthwhile. So.
Yeah, it probably, I mean, you reached millions of kids in 2019. That kids will soon be grown-ups, and probably some of them is maybe inspired by your feats. Like, for example, maybe it's even more heroic why the moment that you said when you came back because a guy on your crew was hurt, then if you waved the flag on the summit. So do you think that maybe that's also, I believe you do, that's a great part of all this Skype thing, that you created mm, some inspiration for these kids that they want to achieve great deeds. They want to they want to act heroic. They want to be heroes and adventurers and everything.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if they do that, then great. But what I was really trying to achieve was for them to understand who they were as human beings and the opportunities that they have, whether they're wealthy or not, the opportunities that you have in life because you're a decent human being. If you can be a really good person, then you can achieve quite a lot. People will attach to you. So when I'm giving these lessons, this will explain it better. When I'm in the death zone with those 200 children, and it's being recorded for all the other children around the world who live in Africa, Canada, US, UK, in parts of Europe, all these different places around the world. How do you spend 10 minutes, just 10 minutes? And what do you say to people, these young people? Because it won't be relevant. Certain things won't be relevant. So I came up with 4 things. And the first one was to be, to respect yourself. Not obviously respect others, but if you can begin to respect who you are, whether it doesn't matter what size you are, it doesn't matter what you look like, it's just having a respect for you as a human being. It goes a long way. It goes a hell of a long way. And to have the second one, an equal respect for the environment. So see the worth as in the surroundings that you live in, and try and make a difference with that. Try and promote climate action, climate change within your particular school, community, city, country, whatever it might be. The third one was to think differently about life. So to look at life like this, and then to look slightly to the left or right and take one of those channels instead. You see these YouTube films of these young children who live in poverty areas who are being really creative with the things around them. And then, they're sensations, aren't they? Well, it's just seeing how you can actually do something different and break away from the norm if you want to do that. But then the fourth thing is something that I have always struggled with. So the fourth lesson, I've never really, I'm trying to now, but I've never really taken the time to be happy about what I do. And that's quite an important thing. You've got to enjoy the moment, enjoy what you've done, be proud of what you've done, and take time to be happy. Because life is generally like that. So respecting yourself, equal respect for the planet, think about life differently, and enjoy your life, no matter what level you're at. The opportunities that, so in there you can see there's no heroics, there's no bravado, there's no like gold medals or things like that.
Yeah.
They come, that's great, isn't that nice? But not everybody can do that, So heroes come in different shapes and forms. So
Yeah, you said obviously you mentioned a few times when we talked during the podcast that you like going as well alone. And I imagine, obviously sending this message was important to you and people seeing you, to send that message across. But is going alone, is there something, uh, special to it in a sense that, almost primal that you enjoy?
yeah, that primal thing is that I've always tried to work out why I go alone, and that's an obvious question for a podcast, isn't it? Why solo? Why and all this? And I've always tried to analyze it, and I think it is primal. It's stripping away everything you have in life, your family, where you live, you're reducing yourself to one bag. You're living alone with your own thoughts, your own actions. What you do that day will have a knock-on effect of what you do. What you do that minute will have a knock-on effect for what you do later on. So if you don't get up and move, you don't go anywhere. There's a lot of mental strength required to operate alone. There's a lot of understanding of why you're there in the first place. If you're there for egotistical reasons, you won't survive alone because it's freaking hard. It's taught me so much, and I've enjoyed the isolation of spending 50 days crossing Antarctica, 30 days in the Arctic, toward the North Pole. It's been a privilege to be alone. You know, who can say that they're completely isolated in that sense unless you're captured? You know, it's an amazing thing to have. And the funny thing is when when COVID came around and we were all locked in our houses, and I live in an area where you can walk, and I've got dogs, so I was a little bit, you know, I was okay with that. But people who live in flats or in the cities and stuff, people were going crazy because isolation was really tough for them. And I was doing a lot of podcasts talking about coping mechanisms of the first thing is get a structure to your daytime. You know, on expedition, being alone, I needed a structure. Get up at this time, have breakfast, move, stop, drink, eat, move. You know, you've got to have some form of structures for survival. People who are put into prison situations when they're isolated will build a structure within their cell to help them cope throughout the day. It's a human thing to have something to look forward to structureize your life. So it's just things like that. Keep yourself healthy during lockdown, you know, have a shower, eat good food, but, you know, keep your body nice and healthy. Respect the people that you're living with. I mean, it's a similar thing as expedition. You're confined to a small tent with two other people, you know, two big guys, as we did to the North Pole, three of us living in this little tent. But we knew, because we've all been in the military, that little space that you've got in the tent is so important, you know. And when you were in lockdown, you know, there was so many arguments, so many confrontations. And the idea was to respect each other's space and understand each other's personalities. You know, it mirrored an expedition. I was thriving with podcasts. I made millions. No, I didn't. Yeah. But it you know, it just shows you. And it's, you know, when I talk about isolation now, people go, "Oh, yeah, COVID, that kind of happened to me." You know, it's very similar.
Yeah, well, but you said now being alone is privilege, you know, and well, being alone for the most human beings is very scary, you know, and it doesn't have to be the Arctic, you know. Generally, being lonely, alone is kind of scary, you know, for a lot of people still.
But there's a difference there. I volunteered to be alone. And I think that's a coping mechanism when I'm out there. When things are tough, I go, well, nobody told me to do this. You know, but some people, they're alone because they've lost their partner or X, Y, and Z are the reasons for being alone. So that's when it's tough because it's forced upon you, or your mental health doesn't allow you to communicate with others. So then you have this never ending spiral of, you know, depression or whatever. But for me, I've gone, yeah, I want to give that a go. I want to be alone and see what it's like. You know, I wouldn't, you know, I'm not one that craves crowds. Though I went to see Oasis at Wembley, and that was amazing. 80,000 people in a concert. Wow, that's incredible. But I don't. I feel sometimes I feel slightly awkward in social situations, and anybody who's watching this who would be laughing, would be smiling at this moment. There's a lot of people who do outdoor stuff who hate social situations. You know, and I think you guys might be the same. I don't know. You know, you stand in a room where you got to take hands, and that, you know, it's because it's very difficult. But yeah.
Yeah. You don't need to be in a room, even with a podcast like this on the video call. It kind of gets awkward in some sense, you know. Not just because you don't know if somebody finished the sentence and we should go, or and vice versa.
Yeah.
But you understand me. Yeah, and also at this point of time, being alone is practically a choice because of the overcrowded cities, of everything about with smartphones. With smartphones, you are
Access to you.
yes, you are available to everybody, every human being at any moment in time. So
Mm.
It's a bit of a challenge, yeah. And it's a challenge. It's that people got used to it, having access to you, and you having access to them. So when suddenly
Yeah.
yourself in the situation where you aren't, maybe that's a bit,
But I came
but
to think it was the start of last year when I felt myself. It was Christmas, I think, and I was sat watching the telly on my own, which is fine. I had my dog with me. My dog's with me. But I kind of thought this is not great. For human beings to be alone all the time isn't great. I think I needed to work at being social. And I actually made a pledge to myself to go out and meet people and be a little bit more sociable so I could practice my social skills and not be awkward.
yeah.
So I think there's a balance between that I've had to learn I'm 58 now, so I've had to learn at a late age to be a little bit more sociable, so yeah. So it's not a good thing being on your own. It's not something I don't boast about it. I don't I know I'm on a podcast about it, but it can be, you can suffer from it. So yeah, I had to come back and try and be sociable, join the human race again.
Yeah, but
it's a part of our biology. We need connections. We need tribe of some sort, whatever power it comes about.
yeah, but even occasional solitude is healthy. But yeah,
That's true.
yeah, but maybe not when you come face to face on arm distance with polar bears. How does the solitude feel
Good luck.
in that moment?
I love the smoothness of that link, that podcast, professional link. It's what polar bears do is they bring you back into the reality of where you are. So if you're skiing through the Arctic with a sledge with a team or on your own, it's incredible, but it's very slow and motionless because everything is spread out. Like the mountain that will be there for the next 5 or 6 days, as you move past it slowly. But when you put a polar bear in there, you're like, okay, I'm in the Arctic now. Yeah, I remember now. And I don't want to swear on this podcast because kids might be watching, but you're like, oh, blimey, there's a polar bear.
That's the easiest reaction you can have when you see a polar bear.
Yeah. Difficult to hide as well. It's difficult to hide. I've seen a few of the bears very, very close up. I mean, kind of this close, if you like. And I've seen polar bears at a distance. And
I swear for you, fuck.
well, it's the thing is you get a sense of bears being there anyway because you maybe hear them or you see tracks. There's been a lot of occasions where they've just suddenly been there, but they're just as shocked as you are. So the advantage that you have in this situation is they probably haven't seen human beings before, and they've looked at sort of a white, colder environment for the majority of their lives. So to see a green tent and red jackets and whatever, and to smell these new smells of human beings and animals standing upright as well is something very sort of like inquisitive for them. So, and that's generally what it's been about. They're just inquisitive animals. They're just looking. But the thing is not to allow them to get familiar. So photographs at a certain distance, and then they start moving towards you. Then you set off these flares, pen flares, where it's like a little fight that goes off in front of them. We carry shotguns. I've tried shooting over a polar bear, but the crack was like the cracking of the ice, so it didn't really have any effect. And never had to shoot a polar bear itself, but we do carry shot to put it down if necessary, but we've never had to do that. I've seen like, 20 odd bears through my expedition. So I've been quite lucky and responsible in the same sort of vein. Generally, if you're in a team, you can get together as a group, the three of us waving our hands around and shouting and banging pots and pans, stuff like that. Would just naff the polar bear off, and they'd generally walk off. Getting rid of the polar bear in that instance is a good thing, but then you've got to monitor, because the bear will know where you are, and it will probably need to sort of walk around you. And if you find it stalking you, then you've got to really take action. Again, be more aggressive in your off works and stuff. Now, if my friend, who's an Inuit guy called Devon, he's a lovely guy. He's a hunter, and they hunt for a reason. They hunt in the traditional sense of hunting. Okay, I'm a complete animal lover, right? But I've been on and seen hunts with Devon, and I've learned awkward sort of understanding of why they do this. And if Devon was sat here now, he would be laughing at me, because the Inuit people know that polar bears can kill. They can run just as fast as a horse. They can smell up to 20 kilometers away on flat ice. They can swim incredible distances. So they are incredible predators that can kill. But generally, in my experience, they kill because they're cornered, whether the tent positions have been put in a certain way. So there's a bear's been in the center and can't get out, or there's a bank where the bear is against and it comes out and it feels threatened. Like any animal, you feel cornered. Or if it's deranged, if it's just like hasn't had any food and it just needs to eat, and it sees this new prey, and that's how a couple of people have been killed. It's felt actually quite a few years ago, but two guys were killed separately through deranged bears. So
Have you seen other bears? Have you seen grizzlies? Maybe.
no, I mean, I've only seen dead grizzly. I've done other expeditions and other adventures. So I cycled from Seattle to New York, 3,500 miles.
Wow.
Yeah, for Warwick University, giving talks in schools, cycled across Oman, and walked across New Zealand, cycled across New Zealand, gave talks in schools there, and walked across Iceland as well. And so we've seen and done other things. But I remember in America, we saw sort of dead bears on the road that have been knocked, unfortunately. But no, I haven't seen any other bears. But the advantages as well, apart from the fact that polar bears haven't seen humans, there's no trees or anything around. So they don't just come at you. You can generally see them first, eh? So being a bit blasé, they are dangerous animals. I get fat, I get, As I've worked in that for podcasts, I should be a bit more Indiana Jones with, so they've got machine guns.
But
Yeah, and make a polar bear Nazi as well. And that's
Yeah, well, yeah.
would you say? I mean, would you say that's the most dangerous animal that you encountered?
I mean, it's the biggest predator, fast predator on the planet, is to see a polar bear. Yeah, I think it is. Any animal that's cornered will attack you. It's up in the Arctic, you got caribou and muskox. You have, the sea life as well. We've seen Arctic hares and foxes and things like that, and the lemming. I saw a little lemming as well.
yeah.
Yeah, so. But yeah, it's probably the most dangerous animal I've seen. Apart from
Have you ever tried? Yeah. Have you ever been in position on the expeditions that you had to resort to, unusual sorts of food, like the meat of the predator or animal or something like that?
No, So the expeditions that I've done, especially in the polar regions, are calculated expeditions. So when you go out, if I've done unsupported expeditions, meaning you're not getting a resupply, then you take everything, all the food you need for like 4 weeks, plus 4 weeks to like, a month or so. Yeah. So pulling that in a sledge. So you need to make sure that that food in there is sufficient enough to keep this machine working for protein and carbs and everything else it needs. And it needs to be light and effective. And you become a machine. So to then go, right, we're going to go and hunt. The exertion that you'll give to go and hunt is probably the meat that you will eat to replenish that calories. Does that make sense? So yeah. So it's and also to hunt without snowmobiles is or some form of dog team or whatever is very difficult because the muskox are way down there. They tend to run in packs away from you. The caribou are very docile. Actually, a lot of them are docile. I've seen a hunt. I was on a hunt. I wasn't on the hunt, but I observed the hunt through 2 Inuit guys start of last year. They went off and I was like, I said, shall I come? And they went, well, if you don't, you're going to be standing here for 2 or 3 hours on your own. I was thinking, okay, I'll come with you. And I went on the stalk with them and it was a privilege to see them stalking up to the prey and then, the way they moved one behind the other. And it was an incredible thing to see. I mean, up for debate, but it's real hunting. But it was very easy to kill them, the animals. So yeah, I didn't kill them.
No, what?
Just going to point that out. I observed, took loads of photographs as well of what impressed me. And this isn't going to go down too well with some of your listeners or watchers, but please keep it in context if you're listening and watching this. To see the Inuit guys, my friend Devon, not only just kill the animal, but chop it up and skin it and place the meats like a real butcher would do in a proper shop. He had for one life, bare hands, freezing temperatures, and he actually divided these animals up, and he was eating bits of it as well and giving it to me, saying, "Do you want some?" I didn't. No, I've got a mutt here. I'll eat that. But
You can see it cooked, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I haven't got the stomach for that. So.
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, because with like when you're in a position like Inuit, none of the killings of the animals are trophy hunts. So every time you kill, it's for survival. So it makes all the sense and natural order of things. So
Yeah, I mean, let's throw a stat at you as well. I mean, look, everything that I'm saying is still going to be people out there going it's wrong, but that's just life, isn't it? There's there's debates everywhere around it, and as I say, I'm a big animal lover. But when I first started doing this in 2003, the first expedition up into high Arctic Canada, there was 10,000 polar bears within the Canadian high Arctic. It's a vast area, the Canadian high Arctic. Now there's over 25 to 30,000 polar bears. So the polar bear population has increased. But there are some problems that, the sport hunting has been reduced, not eradicated, but it's been reduced. The way that they hunt sport-wise has been changed. It was quite bad the way you used to do it, but it's different now. I still don't agree with that anyway. So it's now just generally Inuit hunting for meat for their dogs, skins for the, money to make for the community, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like a lot of countries, even the UK and Scotland, when they hunt deer, they have a certain time in the year when you can do this, but you've got to register it. It's all got to be above board. So it's the same for the Hunters and Trappers Association within High Arctic. They have to deal with all that. So yeah. Sorry, I've gone off into hunting. I know you've probably got a different question.
Yeah, but that's all interesting theme as well. But I'm kind of curious. Maybe this is connected to hunting. what is the most bizarre or unexpected item you have ever taken or wish you have taken from an expedition?
Taken back from an expedition.
Yeah, and on the exhibition.
Okay, taken back just about 5 foot away from me is a drawer that I have, like a set of drawers, and I have all little memorabilia that I bring back from expeditions. And these are things not like you can buy in shops or anything. You know, I've got a polar bear tooth in there that my friend Devin gave me. I've got sort of prayer flags that have been given to me, prayer scarves in the Himalayas, oxygen caps from the cylinders on Everest. I had this bizarre thing. We were working in Africa a few years ago, and I do this tools. I've got two very little small pieces of wood, almost like a tooth size, you know, and I put them in children's hand, and I say, what do you think that is? And they guess and that. And what it was, when we were out on this little patrol we were doing in Africa with anti-poaching teams, he was leading us. He picked these two things up and he said, this is been through a rhino. So a rhino's eaten this and it's come out in its poo. And these are the bits that have come out in the poo. And I thought that was brilliant.
So you've been on both Antarctica, you have been on Arctic. So those are completely different things. One is the floating, one is the frozen ocean, one is the landmass, a continent. But honestly, which one has the better scenery and which one has the better chances of killing you as well?
Blimey. Yeah, it's actually, that's the better scenery. I think Antarctica, you kind of know what you're getting into with Antarctica because it's an incredible continent that's got, you know, miles and miles of ice on the top. The dangers that you have there are crevasses, but you kind of know where the crevasses are in a way, and moving slow enough to recognize anything. You have strong katabatic winds coming off the glaciers and stuff. So you get tremendous cold in Antarctica. Height as well. So you move up to 3,000 meters on the plateau, heading towards the South Pole. So there's a mild sort of exhaustion level towards the end of the expedition at the pole. So they're the kind of dangers, penguins with flick knives, things like that. That was a joke. Very serious there. So it's just, but they're the dangers really of Antarctica. You kind of know what it is. And but before I did the expedition, somebody said to me, it's just a slog, meaning that how you just day to day, you're pushing forward. But moving to the Arctic is a completely different ball game altogether. It's a floating ocean, which used to have like vast areas of ice, which is depleted to 50% now. So the unpredictability, the unforgivingness of the area, the changing scenery all the time of what's out there, it's just extremely dangerous for human beings to move from a coastline to the pole or operate within the surface. Then you have your added interest of polar bears that we've already mentioned, and other things that can factor in, like falling through the ice into the ocean. Also, the fact of this is a key thing from the modern era, is rescue. In Antarctica, if you fall into any problems, then there are teams that you're registering with because it's a governed area. It's very restrictive and well governed. They will pinpoint your position and they can come and rescue you generally if the weather is good. Yeah. Might have to, it depends on the weather. The Arctic is very different. You know, I mean, to commit yourself to an expedition in the first place needs to have the consideration of the rescue teams that potentially and probably will have to come and get you. So the whole era of polar exploration has changed completely on the Arctic Ocean. And we've published seen our last ever expeditions from a coastline of Russia or Canada towards the geographic North Pole. Not to say it can't be done. I personally think that with persistence and understanding, you can cover the 640 miles from Russia or the 470 miles from Canada towards the geographic North Pole. I think human beings can find a way through. But if something happens, then a pilot's got to come in who's got a family at home with kids and try and pick up this so-called explorer in a rescue. So we do have a responsibility. So that's the real thing. Both equal in its views and landscape, but extremely different in the dangers. So
And you've probably been asked a bunch of ridiculous questions, but maybe this is one of them. But this podcast wouldn't be Unscriptify if we wouldn't try to debunk some conspiracies along the way. So either Arctic or Antarctica, mostly in Antarctica, there's a lot of internet stories about blood waterfalls, about pyramid satellite sightings, alien military bases. And you've been there yourself and you can debunk it. Have you ever seen something mysterious, unexplained, or just downright weird on Antarctica? You probably have, but not in this sense.
no, I haven't seen anything. Is the short answer for that. But like the oceans, a lot of it hasn't been explored properly. Even the maps that are set out for pilots to cross, and we use navigational, aerial maps to navigate off. Some of them are not completely accurate. So, there are areas which haven't been explored. It's a bit like Greenland with Trump saying he's going to buy Greenland. They want the minerals around. The reason why they haven't been able to get at the minerals is because it's very difficult to get at them in the cold that they're operating in. So you're dealing with areas of the planet, the ocean, the polar regions that are very difficult for humans to access and explore depth-wise completely. So it's not to say there isn't anything there. I'm completely open to some conspiracies. My friend, my friend who I sat next to at school, believes the Earth is flat. Now his friend, i.e. me, has been to the North and the South Pole, and he's still convinced the Earth is flat. I mean, there's some conspiracy theories that I'm just like, no. But, there's
Really like that.
It's just so comical. But there's some things that, maybe there are things out there that we can't really explain. Alien might or whatever. But, just leave that in somewhere.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying not all conspiracy theories are made equal. Some believe Earth is flat, and some can question some legit stuff. So.
Yeah, I think when you base a whole documentary about conspiracy, then you believe it because all the evidence that they're given is from that documentary. It's kind of like you brainwashed in believing that is true. So it's like Trump says, about the truth and everything. It's kind of, what do you believe nowadays online? What do that's the difficulty. What do you believe in fake news? So it's yeah.
Well, I believe the sun rises on the east and sets on the west.
Sun rising in the north and sets in the south.
And the Earth is definitely not flat.
I want to know.
Go on.
Yeah, go on.
Because you are. I believe that you have one life and you need to make the most of it and go your way through that life and grabbing every opportunity you can get and just really immerse yourself, and let everybody else have a circus and a carnival around you.
Yeah, but I actually think you have two lives. That the second one starts when you really genuinely and finally understand that you have just one. But
that's a nice way of putting it. Maybe I had when I was in the army, I was very, very young. I left when I was 22. So that's university days, really. I was in for 4 years. Um, and I traveled for a lot around the areas that I'd been in the military. So like Israel and places like that. And then the fire and rescue service, you know, it was kind of like a team living in the same area. It was only until I started to explore that I got a rebirth of what you've just said. It's a second life, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. I want to know one more thing before we wrap up. When you are freezing, when you are exhausted and everything in your body says, turn back, what keeps you moving forward?
You know, I've been in that situation 3 or 4 times, I would say, whereby everything is screaming at me to go back to the comfort of the life.
Mhm.
But then I try and think through it as everything is momentary. So, I, you know, if you can just live through that moment, that few moments of negativity, of weakness within you, then and keep pushing forward, then just take it as that moment, keep pushing forward, then you will succeed in what you're doing. It's just the weakness is just a mechanism to reassess.
Uh-huh.
And go back to what we said earlier about me saying that I can get through a lot of stuff because I put myself in that position. Nobody told me to do it, you know. So I've only got myself to blame. So, but it is really tough to. I really feel for people who've got so much stress and so many things wrong with their lives at the moment that they don't see any way out. Uh, and I've had that on expedition. I've had it in life sometimes. But the thing is not to act straight away. The thing is to step back slightly in safety and to rethink what you're going to do and to have that mindset of moving forward. Because once you move forward, everything will start gradually to get better. And we are all experienced in that. We can all relate to that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and just one for me as well. We talked about your work with your influence on kids around in schools around the world. We talked about your briefly mentioned anti-poaching as well. But you also done some work with blind people societies in UK. That's right.
Yeah, I'm pleased you mentioned that because we are on a podcast that is it's less visual, isn't it? Did you mention?
Yeah, it's primarily audio version. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do with this link is I'll send it to. I'm from Coventry in the UK, so I send it to the Blind Society in Coventry, where there'll be 50 or 60 blind people will be listening to this podcast, which they'll really enjoy because they've met me anyway. And when I go there, they feel the ice axe and the polar bear tooth, and they get a real sense of what I do. What they do as well is they promote that on a further platform for the UK. So they send it on national, and they send it nationally, basically. So that's one aspect. What I do with my exploration, I go on the journey for them, so they almost stand shoulder to shoulder with me on mountains and on ice, and experience through my eyes, if you like, which is quite a. I mean, isn't that great? That's a real privilege, a real great what I do. So for me, so yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. It's the Coventry Blind. It's a partially blind society in Coventry, the Monday Club. They'll love it. I've said the perfect.
Yeah, please do, and tell us their opinion about the episode. And thank you for sharing your world, your experience with us as well on this podcast. And we also want to share a little bit of our world, the world that we have grown up with you and to our listeners, as we do in every episode. At the end of every episode, we have a quote from Yugoslavian or Montenegrin person on our language and translated to English a little bit. And for this episode, Luca prepared something.
I picked a quote from the great actor from Yugoslavia, Velimir Bata Živojinović, and on our language he said, previše smijeha je komedija, previše suza je tragedija. Prava mjera je umjetnost. And on English it would translate to, too much laughter is comedy. Too many tears is tragedy. Right measure of both is art.
Yeah, that's great. It's a nice way to end a podcast. That's really good.
I think it is.
Really good. Yeah. It's been a real privilege to sort of speak to you guys. I always love to spread the word of what I do and promote the planet and that. So hopefully we can catch up again, maybe after the next expedition.
Definitely.